Hello YouTube, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you guys how to recycle a broken DS Lite. This particular one has a broken top screen, which I'll show you in a second. This also works for the old style fat original DS's. It will not work with the ones with the cameras, so the DSi is a no-go. But I will show you how to convert them into a Game Boy Macro, which essentially is a kind of a cheap man's modded GBA. Allows you to have backlit Game Boy Advance, but yeah, with a rechargeable battery. And it makes use of broken DS's. So let's just get on straight onto the building. So first thing we need to do is to disassemble the DS. So for that you're going to need two things. You're going to need a tri-ring screwdriver and you're going to need a small Phillips screwdriver. So I'll grab those bits and we will crack on with that. Okay, so I've got the tools required. So also for this, I'm just going to quickly go through the tools that you're going to need. You're going to obviously need a DS Lite. You're going to need some solder and a soldering iron. Hot glue gun, it recommends in the actual online instructions, but you don't need that. You can use a bit of double-sided tape. That's just for securing down the speaker if you decide to put a speaker in. Tri-ring screwdriver, and a small Phillips, which are the ones I've already discussed, which I've got here, and I've also got a slightly better tri-ring one here. You're going to need a 330 ohm surface resistor, which is a 0805 surface mount resistor, or you can use a standard 330 ohm resistor, but a surface mount one is better to use, to be honest. I've never done it with a standard resistor, so that's it's going to make it a lot more bulky inside having a proper resistor, whereas an SMD resistor is literally like minuscule, that's going to take up very small space. 30 gauge Kynar wire, or Kynar wire, that's for the speaker. So I found that you don't necessarily need to stick to that gauge because it's very low voltage going through it anyway, so it's not like it's going to burn out. But it's primarily for the reassembling, so you don't have thick wire protruding here and there. But again, that is optional if you want to have a external speaker as opposed to the headphone jack. And the other thing that's recommended, and it says optional, but I would definitely also recommend it, is a pair of tweezers. Some electrostatic tweezers would be a massive help, especially when it comes to soldering the SMD component, because it is absolutely minute, right? Now, there's a piece of red on my finger here, two actually, which is just a piece of shielding off some wire I had. You'd probably fit about 3 of those resistors in that space of that red tape. That's how small they are. So some electrostatic tweezers would be massively helpful. They're relatively cheap to pick up, so they're handy, and most, they're worth having in your kit. But anyway, let's get on with this tear down and open this up, and then we'll go from there. So you want to take out the slot 2 cartridge, and the stylus. I always chuck that to one side and keep it in case I need it. So the first thing you're going to do is use your tri-ring screwdriver, your Phillips, sorry, to open up the battery compartment and remove the battery, which is pretty simple. He says, if he picks the correct one up. There we go. So these ones don't actually have it. See, I can't see too well, but these ones I got before, it's a bit worn out now, but it does actually say what they are, so I usually look at them and then be like, oh yeah, that's the tri-ring. These ones were slightly cheaper ones that I got sent free with an order I did, but they're just handy to have about. So yeah, we open that. Oh, we haven't done it properly, have we? Open this. There we go. And take the battery out, which is just a little tab here, which we just pop. So I'm going to use a little spludger for that so I don't damage anything. He says they can be a bit awkward to get out, but once they... There we go. So the battery's out. So set that aside because you'll be reusing that. And then you've got, I'll show you where the screws are, and then I will unscrew everything and then come back to the video. So you've got a Phillips and a Phillips just in here, which you don't need to open just yet, but you will later on, so you may as well do it now. And then you've got a tri-wing, so you have one in this corner, one in this corner, one in here, and one here, the little black one, just there. You've also got two hidden ones, which are underneath these little pads. So if you pop these little pads off, and you've also got two under here. Usually they're tri-wing, but for some reason this one they're Phillips. Never know. Okay, so you're going to be doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 screws, and then we will be back to where we are now. So skip forward ahead. Okay, all those screws are removed. I've keep them in a little tub or something to keep them safe because you will need them again. So the next thing is to open up the DS. So now they've all been removed, and you have removed your bottom cartridge slot holder thing. This is very easily missed. I've done many of these and I've tried to open it and then forgot I've left this in. So make sure you take that out. You literally just wiggle it apart. As you can see there, it's starting to come apart. And then we just pop a spudger in and pop it open. And just follow the spudger all the way around, and eventually it will release. There we go, like so. Right, so you want to take the bumper triggers. These are made up from, obviously, the plastic bumper. You have a very tiny spring, and you have this solid piece of metal. So this one's actually been quite good, but normally they fall right through and you have to reassemble them. So keep these, all three of these parts along with your screws, very safe. So that one's just done it. So they will fling out and ping you on the finger. But yeah, these ones are actually in quite well, so they're holding quite nicely. But you can see there, the small little spring, which is what gives you the rebound, and a little piece of metal. So now we're down to the main board of the DS. We'll set the back bit aside. So if you want to do is pop these two terminals up. So you've got the white one, which just pops up, and the black one here, and put those aside. Now this chip here, this is the BIOS for the DS. So for now, at least, you can remove that. That literally just unsnaps. That's just on a simple. Sometimes they're glued as well, actually. So sometimes this one is one of the ones which I think is glued. Yeah. So gentle wiggle, and it'll come free. So there's like a little glue pad here. That's, it's not on anything important, so it's not going to pull anything up with it. And then it simply snaps in on this terminal here to this one here. So putting them back in is very easy. So put the BIOS to one side. And the next thing to do now they've released, is we've got one final screw. If you didn't unpin the other two over here, then obviously you'll have those as well. But there'll be these ones here with the white circles on are the ones that are holding it to the board. So we'll just quickly pop that last one up, which is a Phillips screwdriver. We'll pop that in our little pile of things. And now the board should now be free, so you can lift the board up and turn it over. And then up here we have the connection to the top screen. Now there's a little black, if I can zoom in, there we go. There's a little black bar which holds the ribbon in. So if you, either with a fingernail or you can use a spudger, you just pop that up towards you. I use a fingernail because it's easier, like so, and it will pop up, and that will then release the ribbon. Technically, I guess you could just cut through it because you're not going to be using the top screen, but I like it to be tidy, so I do it properly. So then you just literally pop it out and it comes out, and then you pop that back down just to be safe, so it doesn't break in case you want to use the board again for something else. Right, next thing we have, let's is to remove the bottom screen temporarily. So I'm going to zoom back out. So the same principle with the bottom screen, apart from it's this one here. So we'll do that one quickly. And then pop that out. And there's a connection for the digitizer or the touch screen around the other side, which is just here. This one is very easy to break. So this one be very careful with, because I've broken this many times when I was first started. So this one is a slightly different mechanism. It's on more of a, zoom in on it. So it's on more of a actual hinge. So it's this one just here. So you see there's like a little hinge. So we'll pop that to one side. Okay. Now the black wire goes to your Wi-Fi, I believe. Is it Wi-Fi? We'll go with that. I think it is. So I don't think we're going to need it. So you can pull that out through there. Sorted. One of them does Wi-Fi and one of them does the microphone. I believe the black is the Wi-Fi and the other one is the microphone. But you're not going to be using the microphone or the Wi-Fi, so both are irrelevant. So you don't need both. So essentially this lump here is all redundant, apart from this piece here actually. So we need the top screen. So to get that off there, we undo these two screws here. We'll place the board to one side and we'll get on with the case next. So the board is just two Phillips screws here, this casing. So we'll whip those out. Again, your buttons as well. The buttons are in here, literally underneath these things. They literally pull off. So if you want to, you can take that out, give the buttons a clean or whatever, put them to the side and then put them back in afterwards. But again, these ones seem to be held in quite well, so I'm not going to interfere with them. Usually when you open it, quite often some of them will fall out and you'll end up chasing them around. But this one, yeah, seems to be good. So yeah, we'll open these two screws. These ones are quite long screws, so these ones are quite easily identifiable. That then releases the bottom from the top, as it were. So that then comes like that, and then this one you literally can just pull through because you don't need to worry about this cable because the top screen's redundant. So you can either cut the cable or you can just wiggle it free and they will all come loose. So I find if you jump it all up like so, and then you can just use a spudger or finger or something non-metallic to just push it all through. This is probably one of the most awkward bits in my opinion. It's just really fiddly and I don't like fiddly things like this. There we go. So that will come free. Leave you with your DS front case, DS bottom case. We need to make sure you keep this part, which snaps onto there, and also obviously the two large screws which hold that piece on, which we'll come to later. So let's get this. Now is completely redundant. We can chuck this in the bin, we can throw it at somebody. No, don't do that. We can do whatever you want with it. So that's just, for now, it's going to sit on the side. And we're going to be going back to the board. So let's get the board and flip it over. Right, so let me just scroll down now and get my guide up so I give you the correct information. So resistor points, I know that one, I can tell you that one. So the resistor you need to solder between the LED, let me zoom in. So that needs to be soldered between, let me get my schematic up. So you need to solder the resistor between LED A2, which is this point here, and LED C2, which is this point just here. So these two. If you pop a bit, the best way of doing SMD work on these is you pop a tiny bit of solder on each one, then you bring in the SMD component, heat one of the pads up slightly, so they're pre-tinned, melt it onto that, and then slowly bend the other one down so that they both connect. That's the easiest way to do that. So those 2 points is where you need to place your resistor. So I will do that in a second. Next thing is, whilst you've got soldering iron out, is for the speakers. Now you can have no speakers when you make one of these and just use the headphone jack. You can use one speaker, which is what I commonly do, or you can make it stereo and use two. I've never done a two speaker setup because of the fact of finding the space in the case is a nightmare for one, let alone two. But we will talk through where to do both, just in case you want to do that, and then you can find a space yourself in your own time. So for the positive leg of the speaker, for the right speaker, you're going to solder to SPR0, which is this one just here, and for the left, you've got it right, SPL0, so speaker left, speaker right. And then the ground wire, flip the board over, down near the headphone jack here, one of these grounding points on here, I don't think it matters which one, but I always go to one of these. So one of these grounding points, I think it's one of those actually. Is it? Let me just check. Is it required? Okay, yes, sorry, it is. It is definitely the bottom. So this one here is the only one that you can solder to, apparently. So yeah, the ground wire or black wire will go to this one. Positive red wire will go to speaker left, speaker right, as you choose. If you chose not to put speakers in it and you just want to run it through headphones, then you are literally done. You don't need to do any of that. You just put the capacitor in and you're set. So I'm going to now grab a soldering iron and we'll pop that capacitor in, and then we will continue from there. Okay, so we are ready to solder. I'm just going to show you the actual SMD component we're going to use, which is this little fella here, which you won't even focus on, it's that small. There's two, you can see the two shiny ends, obviously they'll be the ends that we solder to. Don't have to worry about polarity like with regular resistors, because there's no matter which way around they go, so you at least haven't got to worry about that. So what I'm going to do now is tin up these two LED A2 and LED C2, whack that resistor in, and we will show you what happens from there really. So this is going to be a bit awkward because I'm trying to solder whilst make sure it's in shot, so I will try my best. So let's just zoom in and bring that round. So I've got a fine tip solder here, soldering iron. So we want to put a little bit on here, like so. And then the one underneath, LED C2, we also need to place a little bit. And it doesn't help that I've got very shaky hands today. There we go. A little bit more for luck. There we go. So those two are now pre-tinned. Let's put the soldering iron to one side. Right, have a quick drink. Okay, so now we can get our SMD component and we'll move that across to those relevant. So yeah, there we go. So now you're going to take your SMD component or resistor and that will sit nicely there. Right, now this is where it's going to get a little bit awkward because I've got to have one hand on the soldering iron, one hand manoeuvring it in place, and my leg to make sure the tripod doesn't fall over. So this is going to be a little bit awkward, so I will try my best to get this to go first time. And I'm also going to be soldering with my left hand when I'm right hand dominant, so this will be very awkward. So we're going to put the iron on one end of one of these points, is my advice for this. Slightly melt it, then coax the SMD resistor in. Oh, that's just bridged, damn. We'll sort that out in a second. Let's secure this in place first. And then the same, this one I usually just then build up the solder so that it's a connection, like so. I'm just going to sort that bridge there out, because we don't want any on there. So that should be connected now. I'm just going to have a quick look through my scope and make sure that it is, and then I will show you what to do next. Okay, so that essentially is the mod done. We've put the SMD resistor in. Now it's a case of putting things back together. So the first thing we're going to do is pop our bottom screen back on. Now to do that, it's as simple as simply reversed as when we assembled. So you're going to see on the screens they have, let me get to focus, they have these little tabs on the edge. That is basically a stop point, so you push it in up to there, click the little black tab back down to lock it in place, and that's as easy as that basically. So we will pop that in there, click that back down, so there you go, like that, and then the same on the other one around the back. So I'm going to pop that one up, and then we're going to maneuver this one into the slot and click it back down. This one can be a little bit more fiddly, so bear with me 1 second. This one is a little bit more awkward partially because the cable is smaller and it tends to get a little bit bent sometimes from being in the near the hinge and the case. It just gets more crumpled up. You can use tweezers for this as well, which sometimes helps, just to sort of help guide it. This one also, you won't realise, there you go, so this one doesn't exactly have a stop point, as it were. This one just sort of pops in, and then if you can feel when it's in. That's the only way to describe it. Right, because this one's being a pain, I'm going to quickly pop that in, and then I'll come back to the videos rather than you guys waiting for me to try and get it to slot in. So 1 second. Okay, that's done. Right, now the next thing is basically going to be the reassembling of the console. So you want, now that your screen is reattached, both the bottom and the top, we've got several alternatives that we can do in terms of design. So first of all, you're going to stick this thing back on, which is the 2 screws around the back, before you do anything else. Now you've got several options here. You can either smooth it out and fill it with, usually people use like a car body filler, and then smooth it all down, and then completely remove both of these, in which case you wouldn't put that on. You'd simply just cut them off with some pliers or some kind of a cutter, and then fill in the hole and smooth it off. That is very complicated to do. I've done it, but it doesn't look good at all, in my opinion. You've got the second option is to replace this void with something. Now, there's 2 options. This is the cheaper option, which quite literally, this is a plain white ballpoint pen, and I've moulded it with some hot glue and some heat to make it mould in. Not particularly nice, but it goes okay with this black-white design, so it works, in my opinion. The next one, which is slightly more expensive and slightly more complicated, is to go for one of these style ones, which are you can buy these bubble tube things on like eBay or AliExpress or any of these websites. It's just called acrylic pipe or acrylic tube, and I believe it's 5mm, but I don't want to swear to that. I will check and then put that in the description. And then you have that cool effect going on there. With these ones, the benefit of these ones is you can also then place an LED at the end, or I think either end works, running that off the board via a power source. You just have to find a source. There's a couple of places you can tap into. If anyone wants to know exactly where, just let me know, and I will send you a personal message and let you know. But that's a whole different video. And then this will illuminate all pre-colours whilst you're playing a game. It can be distracting, which is the only thing I don't like. The final thing on these 2, have I done it on this one? Yes. So on these 2, on the back, again my filling work isn't particularly brilliant. These are just 2 demo ones that I'm just playing around with, so they're not for sale, they're just for me to mess around with. You're not going to need the stylus, and you're going to actually be removing this thing in here which holds the stylus in a second. So you won't be able to place the stylus in. So for that bit, you do need to fill in with some body filler. If you choose not to use speakers, then you can skip that and just leave the stylus in there and not take the part out. But you'll need to take it out if you want to have speakers, because you need the space, and that takes up quite a bit of space in the housing. So we'll assume that you do want to take that out, and we'll continue from that. So you just put a bit of tape on the other side, fill it, smooth it off, and then sand it before you paint it, or whatever you want to do with it. You might want to leave it the same colour. Completely up to you. Right, let's get these ones out of the way, these other ones, and let's go back to the one we're actually working on. So for this one, I'm going to actually leave it the same, the colour it is, the baby blue, because I quite like that colour, and it saves me spraying them, to be honest. But if you wanted to spray them to the colour you wanted, obviously you would take the buttons out and whatever, and you would do that now before you reassemble, so you don't get paint and things all over the board. So you could do that whilst you're soldering and leave it out to dry for however long, and then go from there. But let's get on with this. So now that we've reattached this bit, I will just finish doing it up actually, because it's only slightly done up. I've only put one screw in it, but you do really want to put them both. But I'm just doing it for time. Just so that, there we go. We're going to then replace this into the housing. And you'll feel it slot into place, like so. There we go. Now we need to place a screw in here and a screw in here, because those are the ones which hold down the motherboard. I believe they were both Phillips, those two, so we'll just pop one screw in here. Right, this is awkward to do on camera. Have I got the right screwdriver? Yes. That would certainly help if I used the correct screwdriver. I was trying to use a tri-wing to place in a Phillips. And we need one more of them, please. Which is the one that goes just over here. So again, this sort of thing, using a little magnetic screwdriver is a massive help. Okay, so the board is now held in place. So next we need to do is place the BIOS back on, which was this little chip that we had, which again, as I said, we simply snap it back in. It literally pushes into the slots like that, and it goes this way around. Done. Now we need to place the bumpers back on, which for this is a little bit more awkward. It can be awkward. So you've got two parts here. These are the holes that the little rods go into, and then underneath them you have these. Let me zoom in on one. These little grooves. This is where the spring will sit. So you will bend the spring back, slot it in, and it will hold itself in place. Usually. Sometimes it will fly out, which isn't good. But what I find good is to get it in position, use a spudger or similar or a small tool to manoeuvre this round. Ah, that one's gone wrong. Sometimes you can get away with using your finger, but it can be a bit frustrating and awkward. So pliers, tweezers are always very good for this. This is usually quite one of the most frustrating bits, I find. You get it to slot in there. Oh, nearly there. There we go. Now, usually, I find, now as soon as I release it, it'll probably pop out. No, sometimes they do. Sometimes they pop out, so don't be surprised if that happens, because they are an absolute pain in the ass. This one's going to be a bit easier because I can get my finger around that one. So there, the bumpers are back in. Right. Now, if you're going to put speakers in, obviously you would have done that on those terminals I said, and you would have brought the speaker round. Usually the best speakers to use are either the speakers out of the DS or very thin Game Boy ones sometimes work. However, I find that the DS ones are better because they're a lot flatter. Now we're going to say this is a speaker, because this one in particular one I'm not putting a speaker in. The speaker will sit roughly here. So you can, on this chip, and these chips is where I usually position it. It will literally sit like there. it'll be a little bit smaller than this, so it will fit in that gap. Double-sided tape it down. Some people hot glue it. I don't, because in case I ever want to move it, it would be easier with double-sided tape. But yeah, we'll assume that that's in place and all good. So you will remove this screw, and this screw, sorry, and take this out. Just throw that, and this bit here will also come out, which just pops out, and you can kind of mold it inside so that, like, taking away bits and bobs so that the speaker fits fine. Then obviously we'll place the rear cover back on, holding these ones in place. So let's just put, that is the volume switch, so that needs to go back in there. Right, so make sure when you do this bit, my top tip for this is to get a small piece of electrical tape, which I will just grab, if I have any. That's there. So yeah, small piece of electrical tape or sellotape even would do, and place it, hold in the buttons and place the tape over so that they don't fall out, because they are a pain, and they don't slide, because you're gonna, when you reclose it, if there's, for example, this one is that way and the switch is held that way and you force it down, when you're tightening the screws, it will snap the switch, and the switches are not fun to replace. Really not fun to replace. They are an absolute pain. So therefore check that. So you want to have this one down as low as you can get it, because that'll be in the off position, and this one relevant to wherever your volume is, so I always press the volume far one way, and that fits there. And then we can pop this on. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is reattach all the screws, and we will jump cut to it being completed. That is basically it. Okay, so now we're all back together. So when you first turn this on, you'll have to go through the setting of the DS up with you know, the date, etc., and things like that, and then it'll ask you to reset it. It will turn itself off. Simply return it back on, and then go to Start GBA Game whilst with your GBA game inserted. Now, if this happens, it will be a simple fix. It's basically set the DES screen for Game Boy priority to being the top. So if this does happen, turn it off and on again. That's actually very good that they did that, because I can show you how to resolve it. And then you're going to go to your DS settings, which is this bottom one here. Settings, and then there's a Game Boy. It's so bright, I can't. There we go. Then go to Game Boy, and then default screen. You're going to change to touch screen. Confirm. And then we're going to go back. Yes, shut down. Relaunch it by pressing on again, and then start GBA game, and it should, there we go, boot up, and that is now a portable Game Boy Advance with a backlit screen done on the cheap. And there we go, we can then open up Zelda or whatever you're playing, and it works just as it would on a GBA. So yeah, hopefully you found that helpful, and I will see you in the next video.